You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Everybody, happy Thursday. It's travel day for me, Michael. I'm going to be going to Chicago today, but I was able to squeeze in this show. Welcome to the Capitalist Corner. I'm your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair, Mr. Michael Liebowitz, who is also helming this amazing station that we call The Rational Alternative. Michael, what's going on in The Rational Alternative? Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. We got the great interview or debate I just did. That's up there. Of course, the debate, the other one about socialism's up there. So we got a socialism debate, a free will debate. We've got this show, even though you're bailing on me tomorrow. Saturday, we got Megan Ribbons and I are talking about some guys whose names I can't pronounce. But all in all, things are great. I've not had a good morning.
Oh, why? What's the matter?
Well, so I had a doctor's appointment this morning, and unbeknownst to me, he had the plans of the prostate exam, which, that'll ruin. Huh?
How'd he spring it on you?
He said, we usually like to do a prostate exam every year. He said, you don't have to, but I said, well, do you recommend it?
Yeah.
And he says, yeah. And I said, well, you got to do it, but it's still an unpleasant, the whole operation is unpleasant. But, and then he tells me that I'm having back trouble. He says, because I'm not sitting ergonomically. So he's explaining this to me. And he says, what you want to do, you don't want to lean forward. He says, you want to have your head like behind your back. Mm-hmm. And I'm like.
The opposite of the way I'm sitting right now.
Yeah, that's so uncomfortable. And he said, well, you're going to get used to it. I don't think I will, but I'll try.
Yeah, leaning forward, supinates your shoulders. All that head weight comes forward. So now your neck is taking strain. You're putting undue stress on your lower back because everything's hunched forward. So it's taking multiple pounds, exponentially more pounds of weight against your lower back than if your shoulders are above your hips and your shoulders are back, which is the proper way to sit. Even if you could sit on one of those, what do they call those balls? Those big exercise balls that you use for core work. Somebody tell me in the chats. I forget what.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know what.
But you can sit on that because that forces your core to stabilize you all the time. Just like if you do an exercise asymmetrically where you're working one side so that it forces your core to stabilize your body, then you're working more than just the particular muscle group you're working. Yes, no, Bosu ball. That's it. Thank you very much, Bosu ball. Yeah, you sit on that, you're actually forcing your core to do a lot of work, where right now you're not. You're just putting a lot of stress on your lower back. Did I convince you that you should sit ergonomically properly, even though I'm not doing it myself?
What do you mean, did you convince me?
Well, because you were like, it's not comfortable.
Wait a second. Wait, hold on. I go to my doctor and he tells me that I should do it. And somehow in your head, that translates into you're going to convince me to do it?
No, because after, Michael, are you feeling violated? Nicole Hengel says, I'm sorry, are you feeling violated?
Of course. There's no other way around it.
Well, wait till you have an ultrasound, my friend. If they do an ultrasound of that area, then they put something akin to a curling iron up there. Not fun. Not fun. This is probably too much information for the audience right now, and it's way too early in the morning for this kind of bullshit. But I'm just warning you in advance. It's going to happen at some point in your life, Michael. They're going to have to do this ultrasound of that prostate. And that's the way they're going to do it. It's not going to be fun.
I had a colonoscopy, and that wasn't what was bad. Was that drink? That was so disgusting.
You got to do the pills.
They didn't offer me pills. I'm not a rich Hollywood actor.
It's not a matter of money, man.
It's a matter of fame. They see you and they're like, "Oh, this is one of these sensitive Hollywood types."
No, not at all. No, not at all. But you take the pills. I don't know, what is it, 12 or 15 hours before the procedure. But then you got to wake up early at like 3 o'clock in the morning, especially if your procedure's early. And do it 6 hours before the procedure. Another 12 pills, and they are horse pills. It's a little bit annoying, but it's not like a gallon of that stuff that you have to drink. That just is awful.
So I wanted to go over this thing real quickly before we get into the headline stories. So I came across this on X after I had sent you the initial, everything for the show, after I titled the show everything. So it's this James Thorpe. Evidently, this is the darling of the sort of anti-vax crowd, the Katie Pavlages. The thing is that these people don't get is I can find an expert to say virtually anything. You know what I mean? That if I want any viewpoint that I happen to come up with, I could find some scientist, philosopher, doctor, whatever out there to say it. But anyways, this I found especially interesting just because of what the guy posted. So he says, the criticism by Ben Shapiro against Senator Ron Johnson and myself does not make a great deal of sense. Everyone needs to remember that these data are drawn from 3 separate and independent data sources, all of which are terminally corrupted. So I want everybody to keep that in mind. He's saying all the data sources are terminally corrupted. He says this is really an irrelevant distraction from the important point. Administration of the COVID-19 vaccines early in the first trimester of pregnancy is associated with a significant increase in miscarriage. He says, I do not know whether the rate is 82, 42, 22. Nobody does. The data sources are all corrupted, including the vast majority of the published literature. So my question is, if the data sources are all terminally corrupted so that you don't know if it's 82 or 22%, then how do you
or even lower.
Right. Well, you just don't know. How do you say that the administration of the COVID vaccine is associated with a significant increase in miscarriage? You say if it's true that the data sources are all terminally corrupted, then you have no idea, and neither does anybody else. This is one of those things that I think it's a very interesting dynamic, but it's also dangerous. Because if you really think that all information sources are corrupted, now he's limiting to these studies, but there's a lot of people out there, you can't trust the media, you can't trust AI. Okay, but then if that were true, and I don't believe it is, let me be clear, but if that were true, then the proper stance is skepticism.
Yeah.
But they don't take a skeptical stance. They take a positive stance on various issues, whether it be the 9/11 truthers or the January 6th deniers, whatever it is. You can't trust media, but I know the truth. Nah, that's all.
Yeah, I agree with you. Unfortunately, Michael, the rest of the tribe that he's speaking to will not think in those terms. And that's why we keep going round and round and round and round, man. Unfortunately. You want to talk about flock cameras, man?
Sure. Go ahead.
These flock cameras are turning up everywhere. Apparently, they're in about 2,000 cities. And it's a private organization that owns these things, and they pop them up, and apparently they can read license plates, and they pretty much document, your movements everywhere you go. The writer, one of the articles that I read, said that he went from I forget what the destination was, about a 450-mile drive. He said he's pretty sure that his license plate was tagged at least 100 times, maybe even more during that journey. And of course, we have problems with this, folks. We're Americans. We have these things called the Fourth and Fifth Amendments that guard our rights, particularly a right to not be searched without warrants. And there's a good deal of very cogent speculation that this constitutes a search without a warrant. The author of the article makes a very coherent point with respect to that, Michael. What do you think of these flock cameras? Because it's a super weird situation because it's a private organization that's being used by the government to quote unquote solve crimes.
I think it's to allow the government to do to you what I had done to me a little while ago. But anyways, here's the thing, right? It's funny because when you read the ACLU on the subject, these things, it's a horrible rights violation. They can track you. They're going to know where you're going and all that stuff. Now, when you go to the Flock website, they say, no, we're not actually tracking you. We're tracking your car. This is reading your license plate. It's a good tool to help us solve crimes. Well, I'd love to sit down in front of them or with them and ask them a question about this idea that it's not tracking me, but it's tracking my car. If the government has this information about where my car is going, I don't know. Call me an idiot, but am I wrong that they could find out where I'm going?
I'm pretty sure, Michael, that where your car is going, you're probably following.
Yeah, it's so stupid that they're
they
trying
claim
to
there's
downplay
no right.
the risks.
They claim there's no right to privacy because your license plate is out in the open. It's in public.
Yeah,
All they're
but
doing is reading it.
Yeah, but there's no asshole following me around with a camera documenting where my license plate's going. But that's what this camera's doing.
Yeah.
Tracking me from going to place. I'll tell you what, if I ever found somebody following me doing that, I'd be pissed off. I'd say, hey, dude, what's happening here? What's going on? You're following me around. You don't have privacy because it's out in the public. Bullshit.
And Michael, didn't we read something a few weeks ago about police using this flock camera to track the movements of exes and
I don't know, because there's differences between speed cameras and red light cameras and this specific. So I don't remember the specific camera that was in question.
But there were police officers misusing this technology, and this is going to come up later, folks, in one of our discussions about ICE, misusing this technology for their own personal reasons, for to get revenge against an ex or to find out what an ex is doing, to stalk them. This is a dangerous technology, man. And I'm sure, Michael, there are a lot of people on the right who are probably saying, no, this is okay. It's okay because they value security to such a degree. They don't see that this is a complete violation of our constitutional rights to not be searched without a fucking warrant. It just shows how the tribes are so ready to give up their rights, Michael, and to give power to the government in whatever area they feel is important. Right.
Yeah. So Jason Adams says here in the UK, this guy is like, you remember that game, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
No.
Well, there's a game when I was a kid. You played it on the computer. It's Where in the World is Jason Adams. This guy's all over the place. Oh, he's really? No, never mind. He says, I hear in the UK. I thought it said here in the UK. Okay, that's what I get. But either way, this guy does quite a bit of traveling. But he says they mail you tickets and hardly pull anyone over. He said, if true, would you rather not be pulled over by police so much and more cameras mailing you tickets? Well, I don't get pulled over very often. But I got to tell you, there's just something about having cameras everywhere that I don't like. They're recording it. And when a cop pulls me over, it's very limited in scope. Right? He's not tracking where I'm going. And he knows that I'm speeding at a given point in time. He doesn't know my habits. He doesn't know where I'm going and where I've been. I could do without both, quite frankly. I really think that there's probably too much of pullovers too. I got pulled over. I talked about on the show a couple months ago. And what are these things called? Sober checkpoints or something?
Like a sobriety checkpoint.
Yeah, sobriety. Yeah. He's pulling me over. Sir, you have anything to drink? How about this? None of your fucking business. You know what I mean? Am I driving? Say that? No, I should have, but obviously then I'm going to get.
Then I'm going to go. That always goes south.
It does, but I'm tough now because he's not in front of me. You have to understand that. So,
Okay.
but the point is why was it his business to pull me over to ask me how, if I'm drinking or not? If I'm driving and it looks erratic or I'm driving in a dangerous way, by all means. But just because you want to ask me? No.
Yeah, I wonder what we should ask James, what your obligations are in such a situation when there's a checkpoint like that. Because, Michael, I see tons of YouTube videos that go south when people start questioning cops. Yeah. Well, and I've seen other ones
James was the man, though. James was the man. I mean, and I mean, James worked for the man. He was the man. He was part of the apparatus.
So, James, if you're stopped at a checkpoint, I think those are wrong and should be illegal. But if you're stopped at a checkpoint, do you have an obligation to answer the officer's question when he says, "Have you had anything to drink?" Now, I've been sober for almost 10 years, Michael, so I haven't had a lick of alcohol in all that time. But I would be inclined, as you, to say, "What business of it is yours? Was I driving erratically?
Yeah.
Was I endangering anybody?"
Right.
Oh, no. Well, then you have no probable cause to ask.
I also want to know from Jim if he can do the show with me tomorrow because Mark is abandoning me. So, Jim, we've got multiple questions.
I'm sorry to abandon you so soon after your prostate examination, too, because I know you're feeling a little bit violated and alone.
Jim, I talked to Jim last night, I don't know, for a half hour, 45 minutes on the phone. And it's so funny how excited he gets.
I can't get him on the phone. So what's going on there?
Well, you probably not going through the back channels like I am. But the second he thinks I'm disagreeing with him, he starts yelling at me. He's all animated. I told him yesterday.
He's not yelling. He's passionate.
I told him he reminded me of the professor in the Back to the Future, Doc Brown. Emmett Brown.
Doc Brown.
That's what that. Yeah, I said it's like he's telling me, Marty, I found the flex capacitor. So anyways, he says, you could clam up, but that will increase his reasonable suspicion. Checkpoints have been thoroughly litigated and have specific requirements.
But he has no reasonable suspicion to ask the question in the first place.
Oh, according to Jim, I told you, he's the man. He's going to defend the state. No, I kid everybody. I'm kidding. But he says checkpoints have been thoroughly litigated.
So they're imposed upon us, irrespective of our thoughts and feelings on the matter, I guess. Thoroughly litigated doesn't mean they're right or constitutional, does it? It just means that
no, but it does mean that
around.
It's beside the point. I mean, we could argue that if it's unconstitutional, and it probably is, but if they rule, what are you going to do? Jim's not answering the question about the show tomorrow. He says no, he cannot do it. So I'm screwed. I'm going to be alone again.
Yeah. So, Michael, what can be done about these flock cameras? They're now in 2,000 cities, and the police are claiming that these cameras help them solve crimes, although the data doesn't suggest that that's the case. The data suggests that the jury is completely out on whether or not it actually helps them solve crimes.
Well, that's the other thing, is that they don't even know. And I don't know. Whenever people say things like, there was a change in policy and then the crime rate changed, and they want to attach it to the policy, be very skeptical. When in the debate I saw the other night, the statistician said, look, the murder rate in cities changes by, I think he said, an average of 17% year to year. Right?
That's huge.
So it's very difficult to establish signal from noise, is what he said. And I'm inclined to think it's the same thing here. You put up a camera, you have a crime drop, and then everybody says, aha, look, I did it. Like we have a massive crime drop in the country, and Trump saying, I did it, and everyone's saying, this is what
that crime drop has
been
going on for a decade.
Right. It already started. So much so, I remember seeing, Eric Trump posted this thing on what a great job his father did of bringing down drug overdoses, I think it was, or drug use in 2024. Of course, his father wasn't president in 2024. Biden was.
It's funny.
Migratory murders. That sounds like a movie Mark could star in.
Are murders migratory? Serial murders are migratory, aren't they? They can be migratory.
Okay, let's.
Somehow you went off. I don't know why you went off, Michael.
I don't know.
Oh, no,
Everything's
never.
good on my end.
Oh my God.
What I would like to see, Mark, I want to hear you speculate a little on this some more about the migratory serial killers. Go ahead. Mark has hit.
Dude, Siri, for no reason at all, just came on and said, "Here it is. Here's for migratory murderers," and it just gave me a list of things and cut you off. Thank you, Megan. I think that was your fault. What did you say? What did you say when I said serial murders are migratory?
I said I want to hear you speculate on something for which you have no evidence. So go ahead and tell us all about how serial killers are migrating.
No, are migratory. But
Ted
Bundy.
talk about it a
Ted
little
Bundy
bit.
killed in Washington. He killed in Oregon. He killed in Florida. That's migratory, isn't it? Henry Lee Lucas killed in Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, that's migratory.
Okay. Can we extrapolate from a couple cases and say this is a pattern with serial killers, do you think?
Well, I think serial killers predominantly kill in areas that they're comfortable with, but there are those who use the highways. Like, what's his name? The guy, Pee Wee Gaskins. He used the highways in the 60s when kids were hitchhiking to pick up women and murder them. He probably killed about 100 people. All across the South, and he would sink them in the swamps of Louisiana and North Carolina. Are we going afoot? We're going far afield here.
No, I'm enjoying this. I like when you get on tangents because you'll once your mind starts flowing, you'll just start putting stuff out there.
It's sort of like what you drink, before the colonoscopy. It just. All right, man. So flock cameras suck. We would like them to go, but they're a private organization. So what do we do about it?
I think people are doing it. I think people are petitioning. People are complaining. I mean, in the end, to me, Mark, everything we talk about on this show, it always comes back to we the people, right? And what we the people are willing to embrace and willing to tolerate. I mean, if the politicians vote for these cameras or the state, whoever's in charge of it, you can vote them out. But I think maybe people don't care. In the town I grew up in, they put in these traffic cameras where they're going to get you for speeding or running a red light. And I saw people online. The people complaining about this are ridiculous. These things are making us safer. Yeah, all right.
I don't know. I don't know what the data is. A camera. I know. I mean, I know it. If I know a camera, if I'm coming up to an intersection, I do drive a lot more cautiously because I don't want to go through that. I don't want to get that $300 ticket in the mail.
Nobody wants that, but I also don't want this camera on me. So there's that. But people are very comfortable. I think that regardless of what people say to pollsters, I think a lot of people are way too trusting of government. Do you happen to know the stats on that, Mark, or do you want to make some up?
Which ones?
Whatever, on anything.
Well, Akira Felix says I would be a conspiracy theorist if I wasn't an objectivist.
Well, all right.
But that's not necessarily true. When I was working in Dallas, I worked on a film in Dallas, and I got obsessed with the Kennedy assassination, and I thoroughly sussed out all of the conspiracy theories and came to the conclusion that one guy did it. Lee Harvey Oswald. That's not a conspiracy, right? That's
L.A. Joe.
Okay. So
no,
right.
But look, I agree. I think that most of the time it's interesting to me because it's almost like if you say Oswald acted alone, you're the conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. Conspiracies are now the mainstream thing. And if you're on the other side, you're the crazy one now. You're the fringy guy. Christopher Smith says people are destroying them. We as capitalists do not advocate destroying private property, folks. We advocate going the legal route and, doing something about it, taking it to court, trying this stuff and seeing if these can in fact be placed in public areas. I think the real solution, Michael, is probably private property. That would be the most awesome solution because then, they can't put up a flock camera on your property if you don't want it there.
Fair enough.
So speaking of egregious violations of constitutional rights, Michael, ICE is making headlines again, guys. If killing if killing multiple people isn't enough, and terrible oversteps of the use of force isn't enough for you, they have decided to invest in this technology, this glove technology, where ICE agents will have gloves that will emit a shock in order to subdue you. It's a pain compliance technology that will enable them to subdue you much more quickly. Of course, the ICE agents have to be trained and certified in this and recertified every 2 months. This technology is already apparently in use in prisons. Michael, did you see this technology when you were in jail? This glove technology that shocks people?
No, I've seen the pepper spray technology quite often.
Yeah, I'm sure. But now, of course, this comes with some conditions. The company itself says they are not to be misused by law enforcement. It cannot be used as torture.
No,
right?
You can't. You can only use them when the person's resisting. They're not for convenience. And of course, we know, from hundreds and hundreds of years of experience, if not thousands, that people that are agents of the government always follow the rules and do what they're supposed to do.
They're going to follow the rules, and particularly ICE, Michael, who hasn't shown there hasn't been a history of over hastily occupying the ranks of ICE with people who are not qualified to be in law enforcement.
Yes.
They certainly don't have a history of abusing their law enforcement status and harming citizens, if not killing citizens. I think with that kind of record, it's perfectly fine to put electric shock gloves on them, Michael, because they're not going to misuse that and torture people.
Never. And they've also now, they're putting these people, there's problems with the airports and with them being in the airports. It's just, it's so out of hand. The problem is, Mark, for me anyways, as somebody, it's like you said, you did a deep dive into the Kennedy stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's so hard because every day, it's like that old saying, the Harvey Silverglate saying that, the average person commits 3 felonies a day. Well, there's how many stories that are disturbing are out there every day. And, what are you going to do? If you do a deep dive into Fauci, that's it. That's taking up your life now. Right? So now you don't have time to look into ICE. You look into ICE, you miss Fauci, or you miss something else. It makes it very difficult to stay informed and to make arguments against this stuff. But I asked Claude, just tell me about questionable ICE conduct. Now, of course, the government defends this, and of course, there's another side. So I'm saying that up front.
The list is scary, Michael.
It is, because we have the Renee Good and Alex Preddy. They were fatally shot by ICE agents in Minneapolis in January 2026. Neither had a criminal record, and a doctor near the scene was reportedly kept from reaching Good before she died. Public evidence raised significant questions about the circumstances under which she was shot. We also have, since June 25th, 13 people have been shot by ICE, Border Patrol, and other DHS officials, 5 fatally. None of the agents involved faced criminal charges. A federal agent on the roof of an ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois, fired pepper balls at a reverend praying outside the building.
Michael, that guy will not misuse the drug technology. That guy who fired pepper balls at a praying priest will not abuse the glove technology.
So we've also got at least 40 instances of ICE agents using chokeholds, which are federally banned. Officers used a sledgehammer to break a car window during an arrest, held a gun to a car during a family's arrest outside church. Local police forced a teenager's face to the pavement during an ICE operation. Another report found at least 170 incidents of ICE detaining U.S. citizens. 59 current or former ICE Border Patrol officers charged or convicted of sexual or violent offenses since 2020. Wow. Since 2006. Reports indicate training standards were reduced. So,
Mike, do we know where any of those stats fit with respect to other law enforcement agencies? Like, if the stats are similar, or if they're really
well, that's
bad
the thing, right? And this is what we're ultimately talking about, right? Is how much time are we willing to put in to actually study that stuff? But here's the thing. This is what I know for sure. Government tends to be incompetent, right? For a lot of different reasons. Law and power tends to corrupt. Whenever people get power, there's a tendency to abuse it. We've had a lot of reporting on this ICE stuff and in a lot of instances that are questionable at best. I know that the idea of having masked agents and unmarked vehicles in neighborhoods is a bad idea. And I know that this administration especially doesn't give a shit about truth. When you take all that, I do not want these people to have, these gloves that can shock people. No.
Correct.
So let's see here.
I don't want a militarized police force, Michael. I think a policeman should have whatever weapons a citizen should possess for the various circumstances that they're going to confront. You have a handgun for, confrontations with single criminals. You have a shotgun for another type of situation, and you have like an AR-15 for another type of situation. Or you have the taser that can immobilize somebody. And guess what? Fucking learn martial arts. If you are a fucking police officer and you are going to confront violent situations, learn how to de-escalate situations and control a person without this other stuff. Michael, some of this stuff is coming. I'm imagining they're using some of this stuff because they've lowered their standards to such a degree that they have people who are mentally unfit and physically incapable of controlling a situation. But do fucking jujitsu, man. Even taking combat basics from somebody who knows Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you can control 99% of the people if you know what you're doing. Just simply using your fucking hands, man.
So Gary Menard gave us $2.99.
Thank you, Gary.
Sticker. He says a major difference between legitimate law enforcement is that if ICE killed agents George Floyd, they would still be drawing a paycheck and investigation concluded. Greg Doherty says ICE is a bad idea. I agree. I would get rid of that.
Out, gone.
So just so anybody that's catching us right now from X or Twitch, this is the Capitalist Corner. It's a show that's on noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, Monday through Friday. It's on the Rational Alternative YouTube channel. Subscribe to us. We've got a lot of great content, this show included. There's something up here that kind of ties into what we've been talking about lately, only because I'm going to make it tie into what we've been talking about lately.
Thank you, Jason, for that $1.99 super sticker. I want you to know it makes Michael very happy. Please remember those super stickers and super chats because Michael had an extremely tough day this morning. He had a prostate exam yesterday. He's feeling
I had
a little
a prostate
vulnerable.
exam an hour ago. What do you mean?
He had a prostate
yesterday?
exam an hour ago. It's even worse. He's feeling vulnerable.
Yeah,
He's feeling abandoned because I have to go to Chicago over the weekend. And so those super chats and super stickers will make him smile. Please, make him feel better. Okay.
Okay. So Gary Menard mentions George Floyd here. And this is something, and if it's happening on the left too, wouldn't surprise me. I don't, the algorithm doesn't send me a bunch of left-wing accounts, so I don't see it. But I do know on the right, it's this rewriting of history over and over again. January 6th, it was a what's that group, Mark? Antifa.
Proud. Oh, Antifa. Oh, it was an Antifa and FBI agitated event.
That was first. It was Antifa, but it was also the FBI. Of course, it didn't happen at all. There's been, a variety of theories. One thing is for certain, though, it was not Donald Trump's fault, and it was not MAGA rioting and putting people in extreme danger. So that's one thing. We've also got the situation with George Floyd is another one where it's been George Floyd overdosed is what they say. That's it. He overdosed.
It was fentanyl. It was in his system. He was unhealthy. Right. He had congestional heart failure.
Right. And they just keep going. They don't stop. The election was stolen in 2020. That's gospel. On and on and on and on. Vaccines are killing people. And they just are relentless putting that stuff out. And I listened one time, I was listening to Sam Harris. And somebody had asked him, why won't he debate Steve Bannon? And he said, okay, this is why. He says, suppose I'm debating Steve Bannon about the stolen election idea. And he suddenly says, yeah, well, what about the bags of 18,000 votes that were found in the parking lot in, I forget what it was, but let's just say Maricopa County, right? He says, now he could just make that up, as I just did. He said, and in real time, there's no time to fact check all that shit.
Yeah.
So if you're debating somebody like Steve Bannon or RFK or whatever, who don't care about truth, they're going to just throw shit out there. And what do? And it's a very terrible epistemological situation we're in here. Okay, I want to put up these super stickers.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole, for the super sticker. Kathy, thank you for
Nicole.
The $4.99 super chat. Feel better, Michael. Hope the rest of your day is better. I don't know if it can get any better than a digital exam, though, Kathy.
Any
Greg
better? Hold on. Do you realize what you just said?
I did. I did.
So the best thing that could ever happen to you is a digital exam.
I'm saying the best thing that could ever happen to you is a digital exam.
Oh,
Greg Doherty, $1.99. Thank you very much. Prostate exam pity chat, my friend. People are feeling sorry for you, Michael. And normally, I don't think that was a good thing, but here I do. Sam Harris also won't debate objectivists. I agree with not debating Bannon, though. Yeah, he won't, because he will lose in that case, especially with his nonsensical premise that there's no such thing as free will. Terrifying, Michael, terrifying. So yeah, look, if capitalists were in control of some things with respect to the government, they would petition to get ICE taken out. There would be no more ICE, folks, and there would be no more of these hopefully egregious oversteps of our constitutional rights by law enforcement. We want human beings to be free. That's the way they deserve to be. So altruistic foreign aid is next, Michael. You want to talk about? Look at this. Katie Ellis, $1.99. Feel better, Mike. Is there no self-made soul Saturday? There isn't. I will be at a convention in Chicago, so we're going to have to put it off till next time. My apologies, but I will be putting up a couple of chapters of the book, so you guys will be able to listen to my voice reading the chapters.
Oh,
yeah. All right. So altruistic foreign aid. So
okay.
What?
Oh, no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, President Trump said he was going to get rid of foreign aid, which is, a good thing. We want to get rid of foreign aid too, but he just pledged a couple of $1 billion to some Christian organizations, and I think there's a stipulation on the foreign aid that it all be geared towards faith-based organizations, Michael, as if faith-based organizations can't be crooked.
Right. So last week, the Trump administration, and I do want to say that foreign aid has been cut since Trump's been in office. It's been reduced, which is a good thing. He says, but it says last week, the Trump administration announced that it will direct nearly $2 billion in humanitarian funding toward faith-based organizations, including $1.4 billion through its America First global health strategy. 3 Christian organizations, World Vision, Compassion International, and Samaritan's Purse, are among the largest recipients, with the State Department calling it the largest allocation of global health foreign assistance to faith-based organizations in over 20 years. Of the nearly $2 billion, $850 million will go to a World Vision-led global consortium. Now, these are, one of them at least is Samaritan's Purse, explicitly describes itself as an evangelical Christian organization, and it provides spiritual and physical aid. It serves the Church of Jesus Christ, yada, yada, yada. So let's just start here. Is it appropriate for the government to be funneling money through faith-based organizations?
I don't think it's appropriate for the government to be giving aid at all through secular organizations or faith-based organizations. And Akira Felix says something that I think is very coherent here. I think the First Amendment forbids that. Certainly, it should. It should. So I don't agree with any of it, Michael. I'm a little less aggrieved by the military aid to the Ukraine and military aid to Israel. Of course, I'd like to stop all of that, but at least it's in the the area of what the government is supposed to do, which is, protect through the use of force.
So, just so I wanted to know how much money is going out yearly in foreign aid, and just so you know, it's not clear because of how they calculate it, because some of the money gets split, so it's hard to say. But in fiscal year 2025, the most recent full year with reported data, U.S. federal agencies dispersed $47.3 billion in foreign aid. This was $26 billion less than in 2024, and it's the lowest inflation-adjusted level since 2004. So the top 10 recipients: Ukraine, $6.7 billion.
But also designate what it is they're being aided on.
Ukraine's getting $6.7 billion, which is mostly non-military, economic, and humanitarian aid.
Okay.
Israel, now this is where it gets a little interesting. So according to this, Israel gets $3.31 billion, nearly all military. But those are payments to the government. So there's another site I looked at that said Israel gets $6 billion a year, a little more than $6 billion. But I don't know how that all works out, But from what I could see, most of the aid that's government to Israel, almost all of it is military. So that's different than what goes to Ukraine. Okay. For Jordan, we give $1.65 billion.
Jordan.
A mix of economic and military aid. Now, here's where it just gets kind of nutty to me. I mean, I don't want to give money to Ukraine. I don't want to give money to Israel. But I could see somebody making a legitimate case for why funding Ukraine or funding Israel is in the interest of the United States. Again, I don't think it is, but I do think that it's an argument that can be made, right? But Ethiopia, $919 million, almost entirely non-military. Democratic Republic of the Congo, $749 million, mostly non-military. Nigeria, $7.29 million, mostly non-military. Sudan, $709 million, almost entirely non-military. Kenya, $651 million, mostly non-military. Mozambique, $582 million, mostly non-military. And finally, Uganda, $512 million, mostly non-military. Now, importantly, these are not all the countries that we give money to.
No.
Right?
Just the top 10.
Yeah, just the top 10. And this is crazy to me. 7 of them are in Africa. Right?
Yeah,
7 are in Africa.
And I wonder how much of that aid gets to the people who need it, Michael, and doesn't prop up gangs, the political strongman in the region. A lot of that stuff keeps the regime, the corrupt regimes above water. A lot of that aid.
Okay, I don't know what Christopher Smith says. He says that's not tax revenue, though. I don't know what he's exactly talking about. Christopher Smith, can you clarify for us what it is exactly that you're talking about? So the reason that I put altruistic foreign aid is how is it in the interest of the United States to give all this money to seven African countries in Jordan? So let's even just for the sake of argument, so we're not getting into a big thing here about Israel or Ukraine for that matter. Let's say it's in the United States' interest to fund those countries. Christopher, yeah, but I don't know what you're talking about, that these aren't taxpayer money, Christopher.
It's got to come from taxpayers, or it's got to come from borrowing, or it's got to come from printing. It's not like
he's saying GDP. Okay, so I don't know what they're talking about. I was hoping to figure it out, but they're evidently having a conversation, which is fine. I don't know what it is. So How is this in our interest, Mark, to be funding these countries, sending money to these countries? Again, this isn't charity, right? It's not about individuals wanting to give to charity or wanting to help people out. We're talking about the compulsory taking of people in the United States money to send it overseas.
Yeah, I don't see any benefit, Michael. I'm sure that they can come up with some form of rationalization, but none of it matters to me. Sorry, people in Sudan, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya. We don't have to give you money, and we shouldn't. I don't know if they're trying to prevent certain powers from coming in and taking over, Michael, the way they did during the Cold War. They would fund certain governments or give aid to certain governments to try to block the Soviet Union Marxist expansionism. But, we don't have that issue so much anymore. So, it's a habit we should give up, Michael. It's a blip on the map of our terrible debt to be up.
You know what, though? That's true. But the problem is I hear that when it comes to any policy, right? Oh, but that's only, X billion dollars, or that's only X billion dollars. But it adds up, right? Ultimately, we're not going to fix the debt unless they do something about what's called entitlements.
Yeah.
That we know that. But nonetheless, we could spend a lot less if we get rid of all of these programs that someone says, oh, but it's only $2 billion. Oh, it's only $40 billion. It's just a blip. We should be cutting that stuff. That's the bottom line.
Michael, I see this little post here from Jason, and it reminded me of something that happened a few years ago. I want to read it. We had a homeless shelter closed down, and I don't understand why.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. I will be right back. Keep the audience entertained and informed.
So Jason says, we had a homeless shelter closed down, and I don't understand why a church was not allowed to be part of privatizing it instead of closing it down. Yeah, Jason. So a few years ago, one of my old boxing coaches he's also a professional chef. He would make these ginormous lunches, and he would go out to the park and he would feed the homeless every Saturday or Sunday. And he eventually got kicked out of the park. And now keep in mind, the complaint was that, of course, the homeless people were migrating there. The complaint was that the park was dirty as a result. They always cleaned everything up. But he fed the homeless. And then he would, since he got kicked out of the park, he would go to certain parking lots where he would get permission from the owner to feed the homeless on on Saturday or Sunday. And they would kick him out again. The city council would kick him out because he didn't have the proper permitting. Now he's feeding the homeless out of his own pocket, his own generosity, his own charity. He's giving these people a place to go for a few hours on a particular day where they actually can eat. And I actually helped him feed the homeless one day. He finally landed in the parking lot of a church, and they still gave him shit. He finally had to just give up. But unfortunately, our politicians here, the political class in California, has a stranglehold on everything, and you can't even voluntarily make food for the homeless and give it out without having some politician or bureaucrat crawl up your ass and tell you can't do it. Just another example of how awful the situation has gotten in California. Almost time to move out. It's getting that bad. You need a license to give people some damn food. You do. I have a friend who had a farm, and he had buffalo, and he had some cows, and he would fatten up the cows, and he would have them slaughtered at a certified place where they were slaughtered, and the meat was packed all in a way that the USDA would approve of, but he could not legally sell that meat. He could not legally sell it without permission from some government official. That's how awful it is here, folks. Anyway, go ahead, Michael. Anecdotal Mark, don't you know capitalists don't do any charity? Yeah, that's why we need socialism. Kara Felix saying, anecdotal, man, capitalists don't do social. Michael, I heard somebody the other day who's a Rush fan. We were going to the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, and I said, hey, he's a huge Rush fan. I said, do you like Ayn Rand? He said, oh no. He said, and Neil Peart disavowed Ayn Rand. And he liked some of her stuff, but he didn't like Ayn Rand's hatred of the poor. This is what the guy said. He didn't like Ayn Rand's hatred of the poor.
Neil Peart didn't like it?
Well, yeah, he was repeating what Neil Peart said, but he was repeating it as if it was so. Not just Neil Peart's fucked up rendition of Rand, but that Rand hated the poor.
I got to find this out right now. If this is
What's
true,
that?
About Neil Peart.
Yeah, well, this guy's is like a Rush fanatic. So I'm assuming, Peart admired her. So I thought, and he wrote songs based on her stories, and he seemed to be inspired by her. But later in life, apparently, maybe after he got cancer, he found Jesus, and he started to think that her philosophy was a little bit harsh. Thank you, Jason, for that $9.99 super chat. I want Mike to review and talk about a music video, Mr. Jamba by Barry.
Your buddy was right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I just want to tell you, yeah, it's true. Neil Peart
look into getting the African translation for parts. Should give you a chuckle after your colonoscopy. Oh yeah. Okay. So he was right. Neil Peart did disavow Rand.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't an objectivist, but he was an admirer for a time until he thought that she didn't like the poor. After decades of loving her, Neil Peart stopped being an objectivist. I think he even shaved his beard because of Rand. Huh. Interesting. Well, c'est la vie.
So I wanted to go over something else here while we got a little bit of time here.
Mm-hmm.
So Tehran has rejected U.S. claims of control over the Strait of Hormuz. And the U.S. has rebuked Israel defense minister over Lebanese presence. Go ahead and comment, sir.
Yeah, so as some of you probably know, Donald Trump is saying, we have complete control over the Straits of Hormuz. I knew that was a brag, Mike. Who didn't know that was a brag and bullshit? Anyway, the Tehran has confirmed that it's bullshit. I think about 7 ships have passed through the Straits of Hormuz since we asserted total control over it, according to Trump yesterday. And they say they're going to keep their stranglehold over the Straits until their demands are met, and their demands are a withdrawal of the blockade, restitution for the trillions of dollars of damage that the United States has done to the country, releasing their frozen assets, and also getting Israel out of Lebanon. None of this is going to happen. So, again, they are pushing the United States into a stark choice, Michael, to either change the regime or get the fuck out. There's really no other way to do it. And certainly changing the regime is the only way you go and still maintain your credibility with the rest of the world. You get out now, you lose your credibility, and you lose a war that you essentially won militarily. But it seems like our politicians are fond of losing wars that we win militarily.
Yeah, so just so you know, Mark, the text you just got, I texted you the name of the video that Jason Adams wants me to watch. I needed to save it somewhere, so I just saved it to your text page. All right, so let me see what we got here for answers to yesterday's question. What do you think of that?
Yeah.
You know what you could do? While I look for this, why don't you tell everybody about this awesome convention that we're going to be at? If they come, they get to meet you. They get to meet me, Jonathan Honig, Larry Sharp. There's going to be some great speeches, a lot of fun, and very informative.
Yeah, for the American Capitalist Party National Convention, guys, is going to be the 19th and 20th of September, which is just around the corner in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Come and join us. You can help us vote on the policies that we're going to be taking to state legislatures and to the federal government to start changing this conversation and pushing it in the direction of a free enterprise world, which I know all of you would like to see. I certainly would. Michael, do you want to answer that question? Nicole wishes she could be there. I know, Nicole. I know you would be there, Nicole, if you could. Did anybody answer the question, Michael?
Oh, well, Teresa Shanti says, yes, proceed.
Huh?
That's the answer. Yes, proceed. I don't remember what question you asked.
Oh, I forgot to.
But Megan Ribbon says, what puzzles me is that nobody seems interested in learning about how mRNA actually works. How can they have all the emotions except an utter absence of curiosity? Because they have what they want to believe and they don't care about anything else.
Gary says Israel won't leave Lebanon. That is true, but Trump may allow the other things. Mark, he may, but it's contingent upon Israel leaving Lebanon as well. I don't think Iran is going to give up on that. They've spent too much money there on Hezbollah, and they have an interest in the prestige of holding Israel hostage. I think that's going to be part of the conditions that will still be a sticking point for them.
Florida Nick says September 19th is his birthday. That would be a great birthday present for yourself. You get to come, you're going to hear some great speeches, meet some great people. It's going to be great.
So, folks, I think I should give the capitalist thought of the day before we
should.
sign
And
off.
let's leave the question asking today to the expert.
All right, so guys, if we lived in a capitalist society, it would be a totally free society, and the police would only be tasked to protecting your rights to your life and your property. They wouldn't be militarized. They wouldn't have these extra constitutional capacities to invade your privacy, invade your home, take your stuff, question you if you have not committed a crime. They wouldn't be equipped with electrical gloves. They wouldn't be equipped with tanks and all the other nonsense that they have, which is far better used in a police state, in a despotic government, not in a free society, folks. So there would be no police state. There would be no surveillance cameras watching your every move and able to tag exactly where you've gone through the day. No government official would be able to access what you are doing in order to put you on a list because you're doing things that they consider to be not savory. And that's the kind of society, folks, which I think leads to the benevolence that we want in the world, the benevolence of liberty. Anyway, Michael, go ahead.
It just occurred to me why the views are down today. I never got around because I had to go to the doctor. I never actually shared this episode to social media. My question for the audience, and please go to YouTube and answer this. It helps a lot with the algorithm as we repeat constantly. My question is two parts. What is the worst part of getting older, and what is the best part of getting older? So I want the best and worst parts of aging. Please go to YouTube, answer the question, subscribe to the station, have a blast.
All right, folks, so you got 23 hours to check your premises. Is what all smart people do. You're going to come back here tomorrow after 23 hours, refreshed, renewed, and ready to hear the news of the day from a capitalist, free market, and rational perspective. See ya. Peace.